It was incomplete. The Heart Sutra. Part 5. Author, Kufudo. Translator, Masaki Akiyama. Chapter of Completion. Correspondence to the Modern Society. Preach universality in historical inevitability. Necessary practice of universality for permanent peace. At the beginning of the chapter of completion, I will preach the development of universality which is indispensable for the future of mankind. When considering the world and thinking about the future, the universality which has not been regarded as important so far, will be the most important three basic characteristics. So, I will describe in more detail about the practical meaning of it is neither deficient but also it is not fulfilled in the Heart Sutra through my own experiences. When I was in the middle of my 20s, while working as an academic researcher, also studying the truth under Mr. Musahisugoi, the founder of Byaku Shinkokai, and the guidance by my guardian spirit started in the middle of it. I had learned everything is the guidance of God's love as the universality and the great principle of all affirmation. It was the teaching, it is neither deficient but also it is not fulfilled, and 5 aggregates are emptiness of the Heart Sutra. From the perspective of pursuing universality and stepping up to the path of all affirmation, Goi-sensei's teaching is positioned as a way toward the position of true nature from the position of reality in the universality without contradiction. However, on the other hand, from the standpoint of fading away with means only, it seemed like a conflict happened, and it was hard to understand some point. I was already on the way to establishing universality and have mastered all affirmation. Therefore, it was an unlikely option to forsake universality and deny all affirmative teachings. As a natural consequence thereof, I decided to leave from Goi-sensei. From this event, after that I was developing my own universality and pursue the world of all affirmations and started pioneering the way leading to it. However, 2 years after I left, August 17, 1980, suddenly Goi-sensei was passed away. Immediately after that, Goi-sensei, who is 500 kilometers away from me, was revived with the light, and he told me that, "You are my successor." I was quite puzzled, but I had already assembled a Jami-Igyo/self-enlightenment training leading to the pursuit of universality and all affirmation. It was totally realistic for me to judge that the succession of the organization that will not be convinced either by myself or in the surroundings. So, I broke off the strong vector of the message from Goi-sensei by my full will and kept sealing it for a long time, and then continued to train myself completely independently and created my own world. Eventually, around 30 years have passed since that event, when I started deciphering the Heart Sutra. I informed Goi-sensei in my prayers. I told him my feeling that I want support from him. If I think about it now, my interpretation is different from Goi-sensei's interpretation, so I was afraid that it may be against Goi-sensei. Then, I certainly felt that I was being encouraged silently. And then, as a result of that, the decipherment of the Heart Sutra progressed at once without hesitation. After that, the contents of the mysterious revelation that had been received from the guardian spirit in 1970 became clear one after another from the decipherment that the Heart Sutra triggered. And consequently, I finally unlocked the seal and came to a rational understanding that I will take over Goi-sensei's destiny. Then I decided to officially accept the appointment of successor from Goi-sensei that had been long sealed. In retrospect, Goi-sensei's fading away is the way of processing the event in the position of true nature. It is also nothing, no black clouds in the mind in Heart Sutra, and I'm treating it as vector sublimation. Actually, no matter what method of processing, there is no special meaning to emphasize those differences. The problem to be addressed here is, at the stage prior to the processing, you need to realize how to discover the primary event of suffering, that only it is important. If you do not discover it, you cannot process it. Even if you have a kitchen knife and chopping boards, you cannot cook food without ingredients in front of you. To cross the river of Jami-Igyo/self-enlightenment training, you should be aware to discover the primary event of suffering as a hardship. In other words, only the awareness of correct suffering is the most important aspect here, and the processing method that following is an incidental problem after awareness of this, and it is obvious that without discovering and being aware of it, there is nothing. And if you lose sight of this truth, you lose sight of the essence of things. In this way, I had officially inherited Goi-sensei's destiny, while holding some subjects lying between Goi-sensei. As mentioned earlier, since I had already been established the universality and Jami-Igyo/self-enlightenment training at the time of handover, I had been put the Jami-Igyo/self-enlightenment training on the front as a way to discover the primary event of suffering. Achievement is took over positively. Heart Sutra cannot be deciphered without this all-affirmative theory, because it is the teaching of 5 aggregates or emptiness to reach all affirmation. I was able to decipher the Heart Sutra, because I was preaching the universality and all affirmation process. Goi-sensei also has challenged to decipher the Heart Sutra, but since it is only fading away, it ends only with the interpretation of the part. So, the meaning of the part matches the truth, but in the interpretation of the entire scripture, there is a large contradiction in the logical configuration due to the ignorance of redefinition. Since I was in the world of science and technology for a long time, it was natural for me to inherit the achievements of predecessors and open up a new path. So, I think that it is natural to discover problems to be improved that cannot be ignored in the achievements of the predecessors, to improve them, and to develop the next achievement. That does not constitute anything that denies the performance of the predecessor, and I am convinced that the predecessor will surely be pleased. Even in the world of religion or people who are seeking the truth, I sincerely hope that it will be natural to accumulate and improve achievements like the world of science and technology soon. For me, there was a base from Goi-sensei, therefore on top of that I could gain the performance. In particular, in this book, I have greatly reflected the fundamentals of Goi-sensei's teaching in the interpretation of the 12 causal chain and the 4 noble truths. That is to say, in the long history of Buddhism, how fate has dragged people in a negative spiral and suffered. I reflected Goi-sensei's whole lifelong strong argument and his behavior here to try to release people from this negative spiral. I am aware that Goi-sensei, who was a mentor, is sincerely delighted with this new development by myself. When Goi-sensei, who was an enlightened person, nominated his successor, he didn't appoint a person who would faithfully tell the teachings of fading away as the only means, but a person who developed his teaching. I have been continued to demonstrate through the practice of universality for the principle of creating the future. It should be understood there is a cosmic meaning of the universality here. And there was also such an experience between Tripitaka Master Xuanzang. That was a few years ago when I was writing the It Has Been Deciphered, the Heart Sutra, revised version. Regarding the part that I changed in the Heart Sutra translated largely by Xuanzang and the new developments. Xuanzang shed tears that, yes, that's right, absolutely that's right, and affirmed it. That pleased figure accompanied me for a period of more than a few months. It was when I felt a fractal resonance that exceeded time and space. This is reflected strongly in my mind. It gave me confidence in the direction of deciphering the Heart Sutra, and it gave me unshakable courage for this decoding work. Passing over 1,100 years, I was touched by the fact that such a thing happened and appreciated it from the bottom of my heart. In addition to the performance of the predecessor, later generations will further build up performance. This is the accumulation of the history of mankind. However, in the way of truth, not everyone can build up such achievements, but it must be possible for those who reach nirvana by crossing the river of Jami-Igyo/self-enlightenment training. Otherwise, it is only a stack of garbage and just creates confusions. The present era requested the decipherment of the Heart Sutra. In the situation where no one was able to decipher it, Heart Sutra was thought to be complicated and difficult, but it was decoded here, and it was a precise composition with absolutely no waste. That view of the world is simple and clear. It is content organized to the utmost. It was never a complicated strange scripture. If it accepts the Heart Sutra that unlocked the seal, the Buddhist world that was almost impossible to be unified in understanding, will be alive again. The most fundamental point of the Heart Sutra is that the essence of human being is the essence of the universe. The essence of the universe is the essence of human being. That is, the essence of human being is transcendental being. The meaning of the essence of the universe is supersubstance, and at the same time it is transcendental being. In other words, it became clear that the opposite world is drawn here, that emptiness without substance. The ultimate truth is that human beings is such existence, which is being described here. Well, the author does not aim only for Buddhism regeneration. Although I explained as much as possible and filled up the incomplete part on how to make it useful, with respect to all religions and history, against all philosophy, and with respect to the future of humanity by spending this last chapter. The view of the world of the Heart Sutra is the long-awaited truth for humanity. It is the truth that it will be able to produce fractal resonance over the past, present and the future. And if you have this, you can see the world's permanent peace. One thing that I want to add from my practice experience to the Heart Sutra is to know the view of the world and establish the process that brings it down to the real world. It seems that the era in which Heart Sutra was compiled was a time when there was no necessity to think about the world like that. And, in this modern era, the seal of the Heart Sutra is deciphered. It seems that now is exactly the era in which we need the Heart Sutra. For that, I think it is required to preach harmony between individuals and the whole. In other words, we believe that religion which preaches salvation must explain the logic of total salvation, that no one can never be touched. And here the whole means a society, a nation as a group of individuals, and particularly humanity now. Reason why the seal was unraveled and revived to the present age. In the present age, the feeling of deadlock is prevailing, and the future of mankind is uncertain. It is impossible to break through this large obstacle with the principle of behaviors so far, and a new behavioral principle is potentially required. Mankind is waiting for a big paradigm shift now, which is the Heart Sutra that gives it. Now, the deciphered Heart Sutra has a hidden methodology that leads the world's permanent peace derived from its view of the world, and a principle that shows a certain direction towards the future new order of mankind potentially. And I thought that the author's mission was to interpret the principle and show it realistically, and I started writing. Do not run from reality, watch the reality. Heart Sutra has been preached the ultimate form of human originating from color, VSSV, and also preaching precisely about human negative side originated from color, VSSV simultaneously. Put the great truth that is called the essence of human beings is as the essence of the universe in the mind. We human beings live while keep devoting color. Also, accept this reality that we cannot escape from the negative side derived from color. In other words, view the world which preached color and color simultaneously is such a thing that theory of innate goodness and theory of innate badness are simultaneously present in one person. A group of human beings is exactly the same. Therefore, we must build our own life, make human relations, create a society, make state, make human society, with the reality of color, which cannot live without color alone. In the order created by humans, even if you are awakened by color, it is impossible to create order only with color, because you cannot ignore the animal state of color. The problem of how to separate the negative side of human beings derived from color is a lifetime task as an individual, and it is an eternal task as a society as whole. Well then, there is no definite view of modern common sense, but the values derived from this view of the world of Heart Sutra are very different from common sense. First of all, from the viewpoint of color is identical with emptiness, emptiness is identical with color. There are two sides, that the one is ultimately idealistic aspect and the aspect of not being able to separate from the animal nature, therefore we must have a more realistic point of view. For that reason, in the future, two-sidedness will be emphasized, and we will have to build new values. And it certainly will be beyond our common sense so far. We might raise the voice of joy for that. Or may be stuck with it and confused. That is what changing the view of the world is. By changing the view of the world, we must prepare for our own values to be influenced. So, in order to accept it, first, you must prepare for it. Stop at once, calm your heart, look deeply inside of your mind. The new view of the world by deciphered Heart Sutra shown here is significant. To accept this view of the world means that you must destroy the old views of the world that you have relied on so far and replace them all. In order to do that, you must deepen your understanding and take enough time. Based on the view of the world, there will be a big development in the future, so if there is irreparability or lack of understanding in the contents so far, there is a danger that the understanding will not be attached to the previous development, and you will deny this book. It must be avoided to become cast pearls before swine. By the way, the meaning differs from cast pearls before swine to a Japanese proverb, cast coins before cats. Matthew, chapter 7, section 6. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet, and turn and tear you to pieces. https://www.biblehub.com/matthew/7-6.htm. Therefore, please do not forcibly continue reading this chapter of completion. Please take a rest and straighten your thinking, discontinue to read temporarily, and read again months or years later. In addition, the expression of the sentence about a specific behavioral principle of the future by the author starting from now is never perfect. That is, expressions by the author are, it is neither deficient, but it is not fulfilled. In order to proceed further reading, you need a ceremony to receive the truth while preparing a sincere mind so as not to grow an arrogant attitude against the view of the world that first presented to the humankind. It is slow and steady wins the race. In order to ensure comprehension, not to commit a great sin to heaven that twist or deny the truth. Have a ceremony of confirmation to the truth and for a while, deepen your introspection. Have days of prayer and Jami-Igyo/self-enlightenment training. Here, chanting the Heart Sutra of "It is neither deficient but also it is not fulfilled" version is the prayer itself of Prajnaparamita, so if you pray and accumulate prayers, the world where your heart lives changes. You can also chant only a part of the Heart Sutra, or even just chanting only the phrase of Prajnaparamita continuously. Ceremony of confirmation for the truth. After passing the ceremony safely, you can proceed to the next stage. From this point onward, we must also mention where we are forced to make major changes to our common sense and values. In order to realize the permanent peace of mankind, it is a barrier that must pass through. Principle of equality and principle of inequality. To pursue inequality. As already mentioned, human beings must always be conscious and make proper use of the two principles that are contradicting, principle of equality and principle of inequality. First of all, as the principle of the universe, that is to say, life activities of the universe is not everything is uniform, but some are trying to become modeled. Therefore, life activities are not equal but try to become unequal. Strictly speaking, equality is just to focus on one of the infinite elements and define it as same. Or, although it is different in reality, from the standpoint of position of true nature, it can be said that it has the possibility of being equal. Therefore, equality and inequality are not exactly opposite phrases. It can be said that equality can exist only for a moment in one particular section in inequality. Or, in the distant future, on the point of being equal, or when it has the same possibility, sometimes we could use the words equal. Or, when creating rules on social life by human wisdom, when expressing the same condition only, express it with the word of equality. If the universe is essentially heterogeneous, there is no equality in the universe. so we cannot explain equality well. So, we will pursue the meaning of inequality in this book and will not pursue deeply the meaning of equality. Because everyone has different experience values in terms of practice, and everyone is different in the depth of their spirituality. And, in that difference, that is, inequality, there is a cosmic meaning. Here, I will describe the degree of awakening derived from the emptiness as spirituality. Then, the degree of deepening the fractal resonance that indicates the person's spirituality is different for each person. The high spirituality means being able to think from the standpoint of color, freed from the rule of color. So, if we recognize that there is a difference in spirituality as a principle of the universe, freedom of speech is allowable, but the weight of that statement means that each one has different diversity, multi-layer nature of spirituality. Spirituality is determined by how the view of the world is embodied. Even if you understand with words, that is not the case. It is how to embody prana-paramita as your own life experience. Of course, it also embodies to the real world. It is the most important thing that living in reality. How much you embodied in the multi-layered structure of the universe, from the reality to the emptiness, is the position of spirituality in the universe. There are a variety of embodied person, there are distinctions between generalists and specialists, there are also a deep embodied person of the emptiness, there are also persons who are familiar with all dharmas, and there is also an embodied person who is specialized in real society. Spirituality means the depth of the fractal resonance, but since prana-paramita means fractal resonance throughout the universe, it is not a nearsighted force or partial power. The answer has already come out in terms of which is the universe. Therefore, even the spirituality, the classification is diverse and human beings cannot understand the details. Apart from human evaluation, we only describe here that the absolute scale of spirituality already exists, and the life activity continues to develop and go on ahead. From the above, we can understand that there are obvious differences in spirituality by the difference of enlightenment of color that equal to emptiness. Furthermore, the difference in personality comes out, and various hierarchies will be born. Besides, each person has a different fate, life activities are multifaceted, diversely distributed and develop. On the other hand, even if we see it as a group, should also be referred to as the spirituality of a group, like the individual spirituality, it is not uniformly. We must admit the fact that it is distributed, multilayered, diversified and multifaceted. In other words, it is never equal in spirituality both in individuals and in groups. It is inequality, and there is no permanent world peace in the true world unless it is reflected correctly in reality. By the way, if I am asked whether human beings are equal or unequal in a more simplistic sense, I can say that it is difficult to define equality well, although it can be said as follows. That is, in the meaning of color as essential, every human being is equal in terms of possibilities, and in reality, that color actually manage color and everyone is unequal at the point of how much it is fractal as on it, and how much you enlightened. The principle of order creates culture. By the way, the spirituality of the group is based on the principle of that order. Even people who do not know the principle, people are being live along with principle. Therefore, the principle of the order of a person belongs, is exactly the spiritual environment in which humans live. In that order, spirituality is raised, and it penetrates even to daily life, and eventually it will create culture. This culture will diversely be distributed in multiple layers, and in the near future, we have to create an environment where we can coexist without conflict. Spirituality is diversely and multi-layered distributed. Furthermore, each is a different fractal depth. Because of the difference in depth, not everyone can understand the view of the world and universal truth at once in any group. However, it is the view of the world that integrates everything from the foundation, whether it is accepted or not. Virtually, the view of the world is a value system that integrates humanity, whether to admit it or not. So, as the times will deepen, the spirituality of some religions which cannot discard self-righteous, will become low. Difference in spirituality and difference in position. Here, there are things I have to mention for the sake of permanent peace in the world. That is the difference in spirituality and difference in position. Differences in spirituality and difference in position will be according to the principle of inequality in the multilayered structure of the universe. As regards its handling, this may differ from modern common sense, so it should be examined and handled carefully. The establishment of position in real society and the principle of inequality based on spirituality will eventually progress in a direction that matches, but generally do not match. On the surface, the establishment of position of the real society appears on the table, but internally the principle of inequality based on spirituality is always in the background. It becomes a double structure, while life activities being progressed. People who are dominated by color are always trying to show off themselves bigger, stretching out themselves and bluffing to others to secure their own advantages. Here, if you always want to say, "I am better than you," and try to mount immediately, it is just developing the world of the law of the jungle that full of animal nature of the color. On the other hand, however, if each other's color devotes each color and they are led by color, the spirituality of each other have already been determined in the universe, and the position of spirituality is also determined. Therefore, they will not dare to contend with each other's position. Sometimes stay at the position that opponent desire, and of course, in an important moment may block the position, which is reversed by opponent's intentions, reject, deny it and take a distance. If you are in contact with another person naturally, you can freely switch between each position and do not need any intention there. If I describe it like this, there may be some people who seem to be quite complicated and difficult, but this is exactly the true worth of the logic of Jnana. In the meditation and the training of Prajnaparamita, you can act in the Jnana without any intentions. As long as color devote to color and confirm the condition led by color, any negotiations will head towards a solution. To that end, both individuals and group must establish a standpoint that is appropriate for their own spirituality. Establish a position means position one's own position properly in the view of the world. There is a prototype of this establishment of position in Japanese culture. It is able to understand well for Japanese people, and we need to extend this to the world. Therefore, we must respect each other's spirituality in encountering a person to person, also in a group to group. At the same time, we have to respect each other's role sharing in life activities, that is the fate of each other. Individuals and groups are not uniformly equal, and we must assume that everyone has different fate and spirituality. Start with accepting the fact that inequality has already been established. In daily scenes, even if you don't conscious about it, the principle of inequality, that not the principle of equality, has already been established in a particularly important scene. Let's confirm that. In daily life, you can start from the principle of equality, but in the case of organizational activities, agreement from the beginning, as a rule of the organization, establishing the difference of spirituality, fates as a form and treat of inequality. But if there is no compulsion there, the order naturally becomes such inequality. In other words, it will become a hierarchy by each role and position. This is a form that expresses the state of fractal resonance in the form and can make the most smoothly progress the life activity for each other. In this way, in the present, based on the principle of equality, aware the fact that inequality is existing in the real society as role sharing and establishment of position, first let's start affirming and acknowledge it. Principle of inequality flows out well logic of Jnana by practicing it from a lower position to a higher position. Normally, in reality, even if you are acting in the principle of equality, there is almost no problem. In everyday life, there is no need to emphasize the principle of inequality. Even more so, it can be said that it is better to obey cultural customs as before. However, within a lifetime, this is not frequent, but it is an important scene that very rare, the ultimate scene. at that time, sometimes return to the view of the world, leave from the principle of equality, and you have to go back to the principle of inequality. Below, I would like you to understand the view of the world more concretely by showing the correspondence of the ultimate scene. In the example shown below, the author will also carefully describe not to misunderstand, because it is the ultimate scene, but even if for the reader, I would like to ask you not to make enlarged interpretation in your own way. What will happen if the position is not established? In the real society, usually, the principle of equality is a public stance, but since it is existing in the principle of inequality, essentially, therefore if there is occurring the excess of equality or reversed inequality, it will become a dangerous situation. The life activities will be largely stagnant there. In such a case, it is necessary to incorporate the concept of spirituality, which was not necessary in the principle of equality, to properly expand the principle of inequality. The encounter between people and people, the encounter between groups and groups is very meaningful for life activities, but if you ignore the difference in spirituality, there will be a serious conflict there. Therefore, in important scenes, we should not ignore the difference in the actual position of each other and the difference in spirituality. Speaking from the principle of equality, it is inevitable in a real society that people dominate people even if they say that everyone is equal. It is a great contradiction from principle of equality. However, from a view of the world, high spirituality people have great power and influence for the people and will generate fractal resonance and will definitely develop life activities. By the way, if you always look at others' color without making an evaluation that who is more spiritual than anyone else, that is enough to respect spirituality. It will generate fractal resonance. It is particularly important that you do not have to and should not assess your own or others' spirituality. However, if you can remove black clouds, persistence, in the mind, the degree of others' spirituality is really visible. In other words, in order to practice the principle of inequality, it is better to regard as a relationship of wider equality than including inequality between each other. Because spirituality of individual is already determined in the universe, regardless of human evaluation. We should respect each other's spirituality and reality, and we should seek for a relationship that fractal resonance is properly formed. If there is a misunderstanding there, fractal resonance will be disturbed, and friction will occur. If the lower spirituality side has misunderstood as one's own spirituality because of one's cloudy mind, and acts wrongly, it will obviously ignore the difference in spirituality. Even if there is no consciousness of the lower spiritual side that obstructs the opponent, as a result, it interferes with the fate of the higher spirituality side, and it generates vector and de-resonance on its own. In other words, it will make sins. In this way, the difference of depth is too big, the conflict grows larger, and the lower depth side interferes the life activity of higher side, which is called vector and de-resonance. The following is an example of friction caused by vector and de-resonance, which is also a metaphor. It is like meet a bear in the mountain and going to be attacked by the bear. Therefore, bears and humans should keep a distance. If there is no need, you should not go into the mountain recklessly. As long as you enter the mountain where bears live, you should prepare for the time of emergency. However, you shouldn't kill just by meeting a bear, and on the contrary, even if you try to get along with the bear immediately, the gap in depth is too large and it is dangerous. If the bear comes out in the village, it is only necessary to be able to drive it back to the mountain, but if it is judged that it is likely to harm the person will kill the bear. Living together in the same village is not a wanting thing for each other. This is the principle of inequality. This may be common sense, but some people will oppose it. Then, why is there a fundamental question that the relationship between humans and bears is not equal? If there is a person who responds to that question that the bear has a rather low level of intelligence compared to humans, the following counterargument comes out quickly. In that case, since chimpanzees have human intelligence over 3 years old, it is very difficult to accept objections that 3-year-old and chimpanzee should be handled equally. However, there is no clear response to this. In this way, discrimination between bear and human or chimpanzee and human and the difference in its position notices that in modern thought, I cannot explain this well. It makes us realize this clear reality, that people and animals are not equal, what kind of principle the modern people are accepting, and indeed the ambiguousness of this point. In this case, if you take up this part and dig deeper further, from the example shown here, various hints for the fundamental understanding will emerge. It is because the essence of human beings is color at the view of the world of Heart Sutra, and animals are only color. It can be said that difference is not a difference in degree, but a difference in dimension. The principle of behavior that humans take precedence over bears will be explained positively when you are at the view of the world. Then, this time it will be the relationship between people and people. That is, the relationship between color which holds the color and color which holds the color as well. In the following example, in Japan, various problems have arisen in compulsory education. In schools, children are treated like color itself, scolding is uncommon, and it seems like it is considered good to give praise and grow. It must be very wonderful, but the children have the potential of color, but at the same time, you must never forget that they have an animal state of color. When you faced with such a scene that originates from such animal nature, you must scold strictly, must turn and lead them to the right direction. For that, with a combination of hard way and soft way to bring out color, to suppress the color, must teach them in a planned manner. So, it is natural that there is coercion and rebuke there. It is necessary to establish the position of students and teachers there. Of course, teacher has color as a human being, but the color must be on the front. On the other hand, a student is a mixture of color and color. The relationship between the student's color and the color must be constructed on the premise that both will be subject to education and leading. It may be a temporarily good thing for the teacher to come down to the position of the student and be nice to them, but that is an exception. The basic is that the students and the teacher should have different positions. Build a relationship that allows you to keep distance at any time. Then, let's think about the important encounters between people and people, groups and groups in society, while leaving from the relationship between the teacher and students. It will respect each other's missions by mutually believe in each other's fates, be conscious of each other's color not intentional way, and respect each other's position in Jinen. By doing this, each position will be established within Jinen. However, even this form in the content, logic of Jinen is completely valid only in the relationship which shares the principle. If the principle is different and the opponent does not admit our fate and he does not admit mutual relations, even if we lose somewhat if it does not lose essential position, in order to avoid dispute, it is best to put the proper distance. However, when this is related to the essence, cannot concede about it. As will be described later, in the new order of the future, we will build an environment where appropriate distances can be placed even though the principle is different. In other words, there is no problem in getting involved in the usual way, but it will always be a relationship that can be restored to the original proper distance. However, since the real society still does not reach it and there are many cases that impossible to physically set a suitable distance, it is natural that the situation becomes serious, various conflicts occur. It will become a relationship between a bear and a human and drawn into the logic of force that desired by bears. In this case, logic of force means that whatever you win is good. When you are drawn into there, accept it's too late from the position of true nature, and accept everything as a God's will. I will pass through non-violence and resist nothing even if it is killed. Or you must fight from the logic of force that the opponent seeks. Even if you are not to be afraid of death, you have to decide whether it is worth waiting for death or not as life activities at this place. Let's sit down and wait for death if the opponent is as the messenger of God. But if the opponent is a bear, you have to run away, Or if you cannot escape, you will have to choose the way to fight until the end with the preparedness of death. From the position of reality, this is shown to be the same logic of force as the opponent. But in fact, you have to stand at the field of view of the world correctly and keep the logic of Jnana in the mind. Formally, you have to accept the opponent's rule and seek for a new solution in that flow. In other words, when a bear and a human being fight, we must fight on the values of bears. However, what you should know is the situation you could have anticipated in the past, and in many cases, it is a lack of preparation. After all, we should learn something from here. Stop catastrophe, great collapse. Ideally, life activities progress in harmony as a whole. However, in reality, for example, if individuals keep on acting seeking their own interests, even if each person does not feel so contradictory, as a whole, the contradiction accumulates little by little, and will be expand, unprecedented big conflicts will be born, and suddenly it moves to catastrophe from some stage. When it goes so far, no one can stop. Knowing that it is not only goodness, it is incomplete human intentions and behaviors, it is always necessary to take preventive measures to stop the catastrophe in any way before. And there is enough possibility that it could be a military power. The side who manages life activities must always assume the crisis. In order to stop such destructive catastrophe, before reaching there, the idealistic idea has the opposite effect. So we should study the aspects of human beings' negative side more and must be decided on realistic behavior. Idealism here is an idea as if human beings exists only color without color. In such a scene, the courageous decision and action of the most spiritual people who deepen the reality understanding of human negative aspects is required. So, for comparing the values that derived from the view of the world that human beings are composed of color and our ordinary values, if I show the extreme example, the meaning will become clearer. As an example, let's consider the ultimate system that humans judge and kill human beings. That is the death penalty system. In Europe, there are many countries that do not accept morally that humans take human life, and many countries have already abolished the death penalty. Should we ban the death penalty in terms of morality? Certainly, you should be cautious in the sense of preventing false accusation, but unfortunately, I would have to say it is a false idealism because do not know the true form of human beings. That is, the negative aspects of human beings. According to the principle derived from the view of the world, before the order reaches catastrophe, major collapse, the representative of color judges for eliminating some colors, the death penalty is a possible choice to do it. Or to take responsibility for the result, it is a possible choice to punish and include the death penalty. In life activities, this is rare case, but a serious phase, and in the ultimate situation, from the position of representing the whole, also representing the position of color, deprive the life of color, in other words, decide the death penalty and execute it. If, at this crucial situation, we introduce idealism and bring in the principle of equality that color is the essence of humanity, the whole order will be rather confused. By the way, even if color disappears, it is neither deficient but also it is not fulfilled, so it continues to exist forever. In this case, color got off to the ground world, and it has fulfilled a large vector sublimation to color. Here, vector sublimation means purification at once for a variety of negative accumulation by color itself, some people related to color, or related humanity and sublimate them. If we look at this from 5 aggregate or emptiness, it will be a big contribution to life activities by color. What's the dignity of humanity? Therefore, in order to talk about the death penalty system in which human beings execute their death against human beings, it is necessary to discuss the meaning of dignity of humanity from the view of the world, a new different perspective. Dignity of human beings, derived from the view of the world, means color does not have dignity, but color has dignity regardless of the animal nature of color, and it is exactly the essence of human beings. Therefore, There is a reason to discriminate and distinguish humans from animals here, and there is a reason why the relationship between people and people is different from relationship between people and animals here. In other words, the relationship between people, there is an essential relationship between the both existence of color, which holds color, and the existence of color that holds color. Furthermore, on the premise the human dignity, the meaning of execution of the death penalty is that color guides color and tries to take advantage of color until the end, but when negative accumulation reaches a certain limit, from the point of view of color, the execution to the color is performed with the intention of color. And here, it is also the meaning of a large vector sublimation. Vector sublimation means to prevent further accumulation, but also to sublimate the negative energy that color has accumulated so far to other positive energy. For example, introspection is one that is useful for humanity as a negative teacher. Of course, in the ultimate decision like the death penalty, it is natural that it is made from the most responsible position, like the national order. This is definitely not done at the level of individuals or organizations. This essential meaning indicates that color takes precedence over color. But the view of the world has not been clarified so far, so that the meaning of the phrase dignity of human beings has been set only to color priority. I often encounter in a scene where it is contrary to the truth. Reflect the view of the world in the future world. Spirituality is an absolute scale. Human beings live by making society. The encounter means in society, it has the meaning of encounter of organization and organization, encounter of order and order. In organizational activities, if the individual is devoting to the principle of the organization, then temporarily match with the principle of the organization. That experience will be a valuable experience in this world. In that case, the principle of the organization strongly depends on the leader of the organization. Furthermore, in real-world activities, each field experience is important, regardless of spirituality. There is a position in the real world. It is a temporary position, a position of keeping, not belonging to individuals, but it is belonging to an organization or order. If you misunderstand it as a position to belong to an individual, it causes conflict between the organization and the individual and greatly distorts your life. It is important to be careful. There is no cosmic absoluteness in this organizational position. It is a temporary thing, but in reality, this position of reality must have respected each other. Other than that, the relationship between people and people whose principles are not shared will be a low-dimensional relationship determined by the power relationship. In other words, it is democracy. Since democracy consists of the principle of equality, essentially it is impossible to recognize the difference in spirituality between each other. Democracy is an artificial thought created in the history of modern Europe and the United States, with the philosophy of freedom, equality, individualism, etc., is a relative value system. It is not a value system shared by all human beings. On the other hand, view of the world is an absolute value system with cosmic universality. There, everyone has different spirituality, and everyone exists under its absolute value system. From the viewpoint of the view of the world, when the two are engaged in fractal resonance, the life energy flows into us to fill the difference in spirituality, and the action of trying to deepen a life activity works. But the event of the lower depth side is being related to the event of the higher depth side. The event of the lower depth side is enhanced in the fractal resonance being deepened. We learned freedom and equality thoroughly in a modern democratic society. It was greatly contributed to the equality principle of equality in society. But in other words, the principle of freedom was the logic of force. Since freedom means that there is no constraint to restrain yourself, you can demonstrate your own logic of force. Moreover, since they are all equal, we will make a composition that it will be a battle between power and power. The one with strong power will win. Logic of force is not a mistake as it is, but people who believe only in power ignore the logic of Jnana at all, regardless of spirituality. Reversed inequality occurred, and a serious problem is occurring. that power people come out. If I explain logic of Jinan in contrast to principle of freedom and equality, logic of Jinan is a random act obtained from fractal resonance. It is not freedom to get excluded others, nothing to obtain the same thing as a person. Even if it becomes inequality, it is a behavioral principle that be given necessary destiny to fulfill your own fate. Therefore, always the logic of Jinan should be prioritized, and it is correct that a person with high spirituality exerts power in the logic of Jinan. However, view from those who do not know the logic of Jinan, it seems like there is the logic of force acting there. The reality of modern people has been living in the modern history harshly, while ignoring the logic of Jinan by using the logic of force that born from freedom as the behavioral principle. However, this experience is extremely important. It is extremely dangerous to deal with the principle of inequality in a realistic manner without experiencing the principle of equality. If you do not learn equality and deal with the principle of inequality, discrimination will occur immediately. Incorrect inequality and discrimination will be affirmed. In the face of such a dangerous situation, we are required to safely go beyond danger according to the view of the world. In modern rationalism, historical fact that we learned democracy and equality, let's accept everything once from position of true nature. Even if you refuse it now, history cannot be changed, so it makes no sense. By using its historical facts as an experience to the present age, we affirm history. In other words, from the position of reality, it is important to review the history and to explore the way that you can make use of it in reality. Through historical experiences, we can make use of it from the present age to the future. Also, I think when I watch Europe and the United States, but even if we say non-uniformity in real society, this is just a matter of degree. Let's affirm once now that globalization of the economy advanced. Besides that, while keeping down the speed of globalization, we should suppress sharp mixing of culture as a side effect and should make it slow down so that not to be bad money drives out good money. Well, in the future, people with high spirituality will become the Lord, and the principle of inequality must be realized. If equality is the source of freedom, Jinan is the source of inequality. It can be realized as logic of Jinan by relying on Pranaparamita. In order to bring permanent peace to the future society from now on, we must learn more about Jinan better than freedom. If you overcome this equality to inequality well, the lower spirituality will grow, and the higher spirituality will broaden the range of activities through the experience and broaden the range of fractal resonance. Individual spirituality and spirituality of order are basically the same. Spirituality is always in the background of fate. Human beings do not have to know. There's no need to refuse if it is informed naturally. As it is already decided, you shouldn't be involved with the evaluation. The parties will be decided within Jinan each other. We should seek such logic of Jinan. And always, we will have a common understanding that logic of Jinan is the highest behavioral principle. Eventually, it can be said that the spread of the view of the world and meditations and practice of Pranaparamita hold the future of mankind. From freedom to Jinan. In modern times, it is an important time that switching from the logic of force to the logic of Jinan. This is a big paradigm shift and it is an important time for mankind. Therefore, we will respond to logic of force by logic of Jinan, but when opposing to others, in the surface, nothing other than fighting with the opponents with the figure of logic of force on an equal footing. Of course, this behavioral principle is guided by a philosophy that is several orders higher than the opponent, but it looks like a battle between the relative logic of force and logic of force. However, in the long run, the logic of Jinan acts in the fractal resonance and can overcome the logic of force. And if you cannot overcome this conflict scene, it will be a retreat of life activities like bad money drives out good money. In this scene, by eliminating bad money, you must observe the retreat of life activities. In this scene, you should never wait for the world that bad money dominates without doing anything. This battle is a battle to defend the absolute value system derived from the view of the world. At least forma, this is a fight. This is a battle between the logic of Jinan and logic of force. So, this fight is a battle in different dimensional world. Even if the opponent is hostile, show the opponent that it is a fight within the same dimension as the opponent. In fact, put the opponent in our world, and leading him in the fractal resonance. Logic of Jinan requires thorough prayer, planning to start from there, and execution power. Even if it is superficially regarded as the logic of force, it is fully aware in mind. While showing it, logic of Jinan will move from the depths to the surface gradually, more flexibly and systematically. Even if the opponent who holds logic of force holds the gun and turns toward here, it is not necessary to open your chest and push yourself like, shoot me if you need. Because you would be in trouble if really shot. In such a scene, show the gun as well and keep it in a posture against the defense. The logic of Jinan is moving in different dimensions from such conflict structure. In this scene, the idealist would say that no gun is needed. If it is a movie or TV drama, this is a cool scene here. Reality understanding for color is to have a gun in this situation as well. Of course, I think that a gun with bullets is much better here. But if I say the most essential thing here, if you are prepared to truly abandon your life, it is possible to be there without a gun. And, as a result, you may truly die there. If that goal is reached, then that person will probably be honored in history. It is like Gandhi. For Gandhi, there should be no regrets. In this way, if this is a matter of resolution for one person, it is that enough without a gun. I think that there are plenty of people who can discard their lives, including myself, in such a scene. But when it is faced with a national collapse due to external forces, how much value for the country that to become unarmed, and this is not a matter of one's resolution, but how much the value for unarmed and country revel. I'd like you to listen carefully to my question. It means that, helping other countries to make alive, even if their own country perishes, and allied with it. The result is exactly the same and be praised greatly in the history of mankind. My question above means that this choice is almost impossible, and we have no choice but to say that it is not necessary either. Meanwhile, even if it is from the opponent's side, if it keeps unarmed in the country revel, it is easier to attack, so the opponent's side will cheer for the unarmed group and both physically and mentally from the back. In order to be more unarmed. As a result, the risk of living in the country increases more and more. Knowing that, it is impossible to have a full unarmed, and this is a scene inevitably having to respond with realism. To correspond to the reality of color is also such a meaning. Of course, there is no intrinsic solution ahead of this logic of force. The essential solution lies outside of this logic of force. However, the first collapse begins like to fill the blanks of power. First of all, eliminating the blank space of that power is the first important thing to do. Therefore, even knowing that this is not an essential solution, we must arrange the conditions so as to stop the beginning of the catastrophe-like collapse here and to eliminate the power blank. First of all, finding a solution from a totally different dimension at different places with different dimensions while creating a balanced state of this logic of force. There should be wisdom there. Idealists find it worth to be unarmed, and even there are many people who do not take responsibility for the outcome. Also, some believers do not like fighting, so they are unarmed, just praying, and they expect someday Guardian will intervene and cause miracles. Both are mistakes. Contradictions accumulates in the life activities of the universe. Friction occurs when the fractal resonance moves radically to vector sublimate it. In such a case, the guardian spirit will support from behind. Even if there is no direct intervention of the guardian spirit as much as possible, they will guide people to avoid the crisis with their own efforts. You must think that it is an exception in the exception that guidance like God intervenes directly as in myths. It is grateful if such a miracle happens. But if you're just hoping for it and neglect your own effort, you should never be. From the view of guardian spirit, so that it never happens same thing again, or even if the second time happens, learn a lot from one time, so that the crisis can be avoided within a small crisis to prevent it in advance. Or even if it happens, you will be guided with minimal collapse. They will guide the human race to make such a crisis avoidance system with our own power. That is the development of life activities. In this way, conflict often occurs in encounters of different spiritualities, so it is necessary to place an appropriate distance on a daily basis. But when it becomes impossible to avoid engage deeply, you have to prepare enough for the fight like logic of force just to win the opponent. It must not be happened the life activity of color is destroyed by color. If you look only color, it is not the preparation if only the ideals. It prepares for realistic action in every point. It faces against color of human beings, and it realistically prepares. In humanity events, we must protect good money before they are expulsion by bad money even if they are sacrificed. Build up the educational system. The new order aiming at the world's permanent peace exists as the foundation of human spirituality. Unless the foundation of the spiritual foundation is solid, large systems cannot be assembled. Activities start from creating a core organization by people with deep practice and great intention, people who stand in the view of the world and pursue training aiming for nirvana. Therefore, we should have established an educational institution such as Pranaparamita College or Fractal Academy, where many human resources learn the view of the world and create a system that produces many people with high spirituality. If this can be done, fractal resonances over the past, present and future will be projected to the real world, the foundation of human spirituality will be stable and a path to the future will be completed. Look through the future for a moment. Let's predict from the standpoint of view of the world what it means to say that permanent peace in the world will be realized. And, since view of the world it is no deficient, but it is not filled, please keep in mind that this is not the final and the only answer. On top of the population that democracy is penetrating, we will build a vertical order and we will build up a new order to accept spiritual inequality there. It is on the top of the population of democracy and it is the order of color principle that comes directly to democracy. Below, the whole order including the order of color principle that will be built up or the democracy will be shown as the Pranaparamita system below. Regarding the designation of the color principle, when talking apart from the Heart Sutra, it is better to generalize it and call it people democracy. In order to raise each person's spirituality, we will train a group of advanced fractal resonance and evaluate every event of humanity from the view of the world by meditation and training of that group. If this is possible, it will be a revolutionary event for mankind. You can call this an order of Pranaparamita or fractal order. In order to build such a new order that emphasizes spirituality, we must further enrich the democratic society that should become a population. The population of democracy, daringly, does not share ideas other than democracy. Once it is good to pursue thorough freedom and equality. In order to evolve into the new order of the principle of inequality, it is necessary to experience one's thorough freedom and equality. A population of democracy will continue to encourage democratization towards the world below democracy. We will promote democratization so that, as in the dictatorship state, powerful persons will ignore human rights, sacrifice people, and will not be obsessed with maintaining power. The three-storied structure is consisting of a new order on top of democracy, and below democracy, holding an area where democracy has not yet been reached, the Prajnaparamita project will start. Since in regulated society where tyranny continues or before is expected to take a long time to democratize in the future, while raising the independence of the individual, as another group that has not yet reached democracy, positioned as one group and taking time continue reforming with the aim of democratization. If I arrange it, it creates a new order emphasizing spirituality on top of democracy, and there is a society that still does not lead to democracy, including tyranny, under the population of democracy. It is a three-storied structure. After all, if you look closely, no matter how much democracy you shouted, in the relationship between the democratic states of the present situation, it is never done democratically, it is never freedom or equal. We cannot wipe out the fighting that strong side dominates the opponent. In other words, the reality in the international community is pro wrestling, not sumo wrestling. Even more, when the countries that not yet reached democracy involve here, there is a danger that the balance will collapse, the life activities will fall back, and it will be caught up in a catastrophe collapse in a stretch. Therefore, it is appropriate to always make weak interaction between the upper and lower layers. Although direct interaction is also possible if the lower layer is devoted to the principles of the upper layers, it is better to take distance as long as there is no guarantee and make it an indirect exchange. When it is necessary to engage directly, we'll be involved in the population. The author anticipates such a future and have done research. A considerable part of the activities of the future world will shift to the virtual world. At that time, AI, artificial intelligence, will be fully active. But even that, it is because of that, it requires a high degree of humanity to control that AI, and high spirituality is required. As for these matters, I would like to mention in detail in the lecture of the author, summarized lectures on YouTube, or another book. Well, in order not to digression from the subject of this book, the story returns to religious regeneration again. From Buddhism regeneration to the world religious regeneration. Aware the correct suffering for the current state of confusion of Buddhism. Each denomination of Mahayana Buddhism transmitted to the present age seems to inherit a part of view of the world, but the whole picture of view of the world is not visible at all. After Buddha's death, a lot of people engaged in various remarks under the Buddhist name, so it became very confused and it was no longer a consistent system of ideas. The contents are covered in patches, gathered together miscellany, therefore revealing a fatal problem that only Buddhist terms fly around and there is almost no consistency. It is no longer possible to ignore this situation or solve it together. This situation is a fatal problem for Buddhists, which is hard to overlook. It is now time for Buddhist officials should have awareness of correct suffering in this confused situation. In fact, this kind of contradiction that's seen in Buddhism is found in most religions in the world, and on this extension, there is a confusion and conflict of religion. By the way, in the future, the form of religion will be disappeared, and as a culture, do not have to be conscious, it will be steadily taking root in everyday life. However, at the moment, the author thinks that it is important to save many of religious people who are misunderstanding that self-righteousness is enthusiastic faith. Therefore, I'm discussing in detail here. Searching the 5 aggregates are emptiness in other scriptures and other religions. Under the great truth of color is identical to emptiness, emptiness is identical to color. The teaching of all affirmation of 5 aggregates are emptiness is exactly the view of the world of Heart Sutra. Certainly, it was preached under the great truth of color is identical to emptiness, emptiness is identical to color. The teaching of all affirmation of 5 aggregates are emptiness was preached in the Heart Sutra. But such view of the world must exist fragmentally in other scriptures or other religions as well. I did not find out all of that, but I believe in that existence. Searching for it should lead directly to a religious revival in the world. For example, the contents of which Ippen Shonin was revealed from the Kumano Gongen is also 5 aggregates are emptiness. That is to say, when the Amitabha had enlightenment in the very remote past, the all living things will go to heaven, was already determined by Amitabha. The part of the revelation. However, the problem always happen here is, jump over the position of reality, and try to fulfill all affirmative truth that color is identical to emptiness, emptiness is identical to color, as 5 aggregates are emptiness with the position of true nature. If you try to practice it in the real world as it is, it will become an extreme behavior by expanded interpretation quickly, causing a big contradiction. It is the inevitable human reality. Therefore, as a solution to that, it is a method of selectively depending on the position of true nature and the position of reality shown in Tripitaka Master Xuanzang's view in this book. I am preaching from the experience of my practice that significant contents and essential contents are once interpreted in the position of true nature, then once come down to position of reality, and then better to climb toward position of true nature again while confirming it one by one. And with this understanding, position of reality means that for the affirmation, it is acceptable even if you make a quibble a little, and if you do not hurt another person, you think that it is permitted even if you are somewhat distorted. Anyway, the position of reality is not the essence, it is a stairway to the position of true nature, and there may be several stairs. If you know that the destination to arrive at is the same, even if the scenery that can be seen from each staircase is somewhat different, the same scenery will be visible as you climb, and you can understand each other. What can be said from that point is, there is a common understanding of all affirmation. The 5 aggregates are emptiness as the position of true nature underlying. On that base, we will acknowledge the interpretation of each religion, each sectarian's unique position of reality. The author thinks that it can realize world religious regeneration with this methodology, making common recognition of the presence of emptiness. If you can stand at the position of view of the world of the Heart Sutra, the most fundamental thing is each human being to attain the fractal resonance in their own way. In that sense, if you stand on the position of true nature, religion will not be necessary. However, since people who can directly master the emptiness and attain the fractal resonance are limited, an intermediary for that is necessary. Therefore, not only Buddhism but all religions are made around that mediator, and by devoting to the mediator, they are preaching the way to fractal resonance. However, because there are multiple intermediaries beyond the era, many conflicts of religion in the world have occurred. Also, as time goes on, teachings change, and together with sanctification, we must properly admit that the universality will be lost. In contemporary society which became narrow, this contradiction has become bigger and disadvantages have become conspicuous larger than the advantages of religion. In order to fundamentally solve the peculiar contradictions of such past heritage in the religion, the Heart Sutra revived to the present age. From the present age to the future, the religion which lacked universality will become an obstacle, not only loses its existence value as it is, it will go against permanent peace as it is. Therefore, in order to exist religion continually in the future, it is necessary for people belonging to it to destroy the self-righteousness of their religion and to restore universality. Without it, religion will lose its existence value and will gradually disappear. All the contradictions lying between religions can be attributed that they are not being aware of the importance of the existence of the emptiness as an absolutely universal existence, regardless of expression or words. In many religions, it is a named personality God who is a guru, a founder instead of the existence of emptiness. However, as a habit of human thinking, a named personality God is an independent entity from the other. So it is very difficult to understand a personality God of multiple names as a supreme God at the same time. In principle, as soon as the name of a personality God is attached, it will have a kind of function. That is, it will become a function of a part of the universe, not the entire universe. In other words, personality God will be one of several intermediaries that always exists. So, if you are a truth seeker, you will realize that universality cannot be ensured under any personality God at the top. You will know that it is the cause of confusion and conflict. Therefore, it is the reason why Heart Sutra was decrypted in modern times, trying to resolve the contradiction by reforming this inconsistent composition and restore universality. Emptiness is not the subject of devotion. So, not to put a personality God in the center of the universe, not to attach a personality name, it is not a subject to devote, it is emptiness, and place it the position of the Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva who integrated into the emptiness. In other words, if you can share a view of the world that places a guru or a founder right below the emptiness, the problem will be solved quickly. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva is very pleased that other intermediaries exist in the same position as Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. The name of the emptiness may differ depending on religion. In order for the name indicating the emptiness, it is good if we can mutually confirm that it has essentially 3 basic characteristics and it is not a subject to devotion. Here, it is important to exclude self-righteousness of any religion and restore universality, but it is impossible to deny the personality God or to deny all its idols too much pursuing universality. If it says so, all humans will have to leave the mediator, return directly to the emptiness, and have to resonate to Prajnaparamita by itself. Therefore, in reality, firstly position the emptiness properly by the position of true nature. Next, in the position of reality, as a manifestation of the emptiness, the superpersonality, seeing the personality God as a mediator thereby devoting. As a result, it is natural that it will resonate with the Prajnaparamita. And it is necessary to acknowledge each other that there are multiple intermediaries under the emptiness. Author is always preaching that therefore, if you learn a view of the world of the Heart Sutra, know the position of true nature and practice the position of reality, human beings can be harmonized pass over the religion. Especially in modern times, a universal view of the world is absolutely necessary. Only when there is this view of the world, we can demonstrate the unambiguous honesty that is effective not to impose something against different cultures each other. In modern times that seek for permanent peace in the world, it is extremely important to use selectively between a position of true nature and a position of reality based on this universal view of the world, backed by the presence of emptiness. Karma and suffering are a serious problem of world religious regeneration. In order to revive Buddhism and to solve the karma and suffering shown in Chapter 6, knowing the existence of the standpoint of true nature of 5 aggregates are emptiness. In reality, capture it with the position of reality, the process of reaching the return point reasonably and climbing to all affirmations from there was necessary. And likewise, observing the religions of the world, there are a few things exist correspond to Buddhism's karma and suffering, and likewise, there is no affirmative process there, therefore various contradictions and conflicts exist. It is the same as Buddhism, because it is not connected between the position of true nature and the position of reality. Therefore, in order to restore the world religion, incorporates the Dhamma-Yogya/self-enlightenment training, it premises the 5 aggregates are emptiness as the position of true nature. Partly adding the position of reality to avoid contradiction. The author believes that it can be realized in the regeneration of religion worldwide. Realize the world religious regeneration from the cosmic field of view. It is already clear, if you read through this book so far, Buddhism regeneration is the surface of the Heart Sutra, and is hidden behind. Through the Buddhism regeneration, it is clear that it shows theories that lead to regeneration of all religions, and aims at the regeneration of all religions and all thoughts in their unifying understanding. In this way, it is possible to discover that Heart Sutra includes an extremely important truth. In other words, it means that Great Prajnaparamita Heart Sutra that replaced the words that Buddha taught to other, it always holds in any religion and every thought. Speaking from the cosmic point of view, the Heart Sutra is a message from the universe that has been sent out to the earth for the sake of Buddhism regeneration and religious regeneration, and to complete the earth's permanent peace. As part of that magnificent plan, there are some compilers, Tripitaka Master Xuanzang, and the author as well. As a message of the great plan, it was the author's mission to finally decipher the sealed Heart Sutra. I think that there is some person who think hard to believe, But the author has received revelation more than 40 years ago, and now it is almost at the stage where it is almost all arranged. As time goes on a bit and the whole picture of the world's permanent peace is visible, that time is exactly when the great plan is fulfilled. By that time, we have to complete the task of replacing phrases of Heart Sutra with exclusive phrases of each religion, not only from the global perspective but from the entire cosmic field of view. For the permanent peace of the world and for the religious regeneration, even though it creates new words and phrases to make the missing concept, it has to deepen to the point where strong fractal resonance occurs with the view of the world of Heart Sutra. When the Heart Sutra becomes a common view of the world for each religion, all philosophies, and all thoughts, it will be a time to feel that the realization of permanent peace in the world is near. Freedom of culture building and permanent peace of the world. You will be given the freedom of cultural construction by it is neither deficient but also it is not fulfilled. Touching other cultures is fun, but I think it is true that people want to live in their own culture. For everyone, there is a culture in which they have grown, and also there are other cultures. Their identity is also nurtured in their own culture, and everyone wants to cherish that culture. However, in the long run, it is a matter of course to think that changing gradually little by little, while being influenced by other cultures. Because the world's cultures have grown in their own unique environments, they contain considerable self-righteousness and are often integrated with nationalism. For permanent peace in the world, knowing that nationalism always includes intense poisoning of self-righteousness, we always need to keep correct feedback. It is not because the author is a Japanese, but because of nationalism in Japan is mainly the centripetal force to devote toward the principle. It cherishes the harmony and does not dare to make an enemy. It can be evaluated that it is extremely excellent nationalism. On the other hand, if you look at neighboring countries, some of them are ethnic consciousness that can only hold an identity by making enemies, and such nationalism is extremely dangerous. Humanity's permanent peace means that diversity of cultures and religions restore universality by abandoning self-righteousness, each of which is multi-layered, by establishing their position in the universe and keeping diversity among them. This is the it is neither deficient but also it is not fulfilled. That means, the future of mankind is never seeking a uniform culture. Naturally, however, a dangerous culture that can only be established by hostile to others will disappear from the earth anyway. So, by expressing that our culture is basically except 5 aggregates are emptiness, we can start from the truth that all past history of human beings have been affirmed. Many cultures accept this truth, which is the starting point to realize the perpetual peace of mankind. In the near future, where permanent peace in the world is realized, we climb the stairs of Jami-Igyo/self-enlightenment training one by one to affirm one's own history, and at the same time affirm others' history, respect others' freedom to construct culture. You will be given the freedom to build your own culture, on condition that not to interfere with the freedom of others' cultural construction. All past events can be interpreted in the 5 aggregates are emptiness, but it is meaningless unless it is a change in the direction of all affirmation, including the surroundings. If you make an enemy or interpret self-centered, it will become vector and de-resonance immediately. Looking back to the history, even if the event is vector and de-resonance at that time. As a way of understanding the process of looking for the stairway that leading up to the 5 aggregates are emptiness, it has the meaning as a lesson or opposite teacher. I think that it should be kept as a record. By the way, the sanctified history, if it speaks as a myth rather than a history, is permitted. However, the history and myths of victim consciousness are denied as all pain, no gain, thoroughly. First of all, if you think that you want to raise the spirituality of your own culture, must learn the 5 aggregates are emptiness and think that the victim consciousness is a shame. Evaluation of that history is decided by the people of the highest spirituality. In other words, human history will be interpreted newly. In this way, in order to realize the world's permanent peace, the 5 aggregates are emptiness will be thoroughly enforced. By correctly understanding the Heart Sutra, an immovable view of the world is established, and the religion of the world, which has been transmitted to the present age, is reborn with the finishing touch. And then it is time for a religious revival in the world to be fulfilled. The model of world religious revival is Buddhist revival. Buddhism regeneration is a model case of world religious regeneration. This will directly lead to world religious regeneration as it is. Sometimes we have to confirm the truth that there is no truth in religion, but religion can be positioned as one of the expressions of truth. Even though the truth is one and its way of expression is diverse, the underlying truth is not changed by religion. It will be completed and unified in the future, which is exactly the it is neither deficient but also it is not fulfilled, neither impure nor apart from impure, and the neither generated nor disappear. The religion of the world can be reborn as a universal thought which can be applied from the present age to the future by this view of the world. At that time, it can be said that truly the Heart Sutra revived to the present age. Heart Sutra can reduce friction when the thoughts of the world will systematically be combining. Heart Sutra is never a religion. It is regarded as the only historical thought system which plays a role of giving universality to religion and thought of the world and reduces the friction to smoothly connect them. Therefore, first of all, Heart Sutra preached the universal view of the world that accepts everything affirmatively but hides the name of the compiler who has mastered Prana Paramita and secures universality. It can be understood that they did not create a self-righteous, exclusive myth, and sought universality thoroughly. Here, it is the compiler and the author's idea. From the recognition that a personality God as an object to devotion is necessary for being saved, the existence of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva emphasizes the personality aspect of the emptiness, making it correspond to the personality God. Even though, to avoid being the only God of the universe, it is positioned just next to beneath the ultimate emptiness of substance of the universe. I believe that all religions in the world should position the personality God. The compiler of Heart Sutra never tells own name, but trying to tell this truth to the future human race. Furthermore, the treatment of diseases that common in religion, fate guidance, good behavior to be done, various religious events, disciplines, ceremonies, etc. that directly related to real life, and how to express love, compassion and honesty, they are totally not described in the Heart Sutra. This fact is that if every religion can be shared, even this view of the world, especially if they can share the truth of five aggregates or emptiness which is derived from the view of the world, they seem entrust everything about daily life to the existing religion without say anything, without showing off. Furthermore, Heart Sutra preaches that even if there is wrong self-righteousness due to religion and history, the culture and art that religion has built in history is the history of the nation itself, and it is impossible to deny it as it is, and it is not necessary. Therefore, Heart Sutra is committed to giving universality to the religion of the world, and to the ethnic living in each region of the world. The traditional religion should take root and form the future of mankind. It can be read as claiming, in order to support the future of human beings, Heart Sutra is committed to preaching the principle of view of the world. Heart Sutra solves the conflict of traditional religion, becomes a smoother between religions, trying to make the best of everything from the standpoint of five aggregates or emptiness. To that end, do not talk about the name of the compiler of the Heart Sutra, only talks about the view of the world and the principle guided from there, not mention various coping methods of everyday life. In addition, by doing so, it can be read that it gives existence value in the future to the traditional religion. And that is to say, it is necessary for permanent peace in the world, and it is judged to be more appropriate. Heart Sutra will become a bonding power for thoughts of the world. Heart Sutra is preaching the regeneration of world religion, Buddhist regeneration as a model, but in order to master it, it requires a certain kind of practice. Moreover, it is quite logical, and emotionality is hidden at the surface, therefore, it can be said that it is not so common. However, among religious concerned in the world, Surely there is always a person who are seeking view the world to have one's salvation and seeking universally for the relief of the sentient beings. Such people can understand this book deeply and should be able to master the universal view the world of Heart Sutra. Such chosen people awaken to the universal view the world. They can correctly position the religion, philosophy, thought and culture to which they belong in the universe, and as a result, they should be able to find where there are problems or issues and how to revive it. Many people who are seeking religious regeneration and ideological revitalization collaborate and actively regenerate their religious thoughts that they concern, and then they will be able to rescue sentient beings in their religious thoughts that they have regenerated. However, without regaining the universality, the religion struggling for self-righteousness is left behind, eventually declining and disappearing. Heart Sutra promotes religious regeneration on a global scale. It is preaching religion, philosophy, and view of the world, which is the basis for establishing every thought, while holding down the emotional expressions, while pursuing it with precise logic. Therefore, the significance of the existence of the Heart Sutra in modern times is huge. It is already clear that the Heart Sutra that deciphered here is already fulfilling Buddhism regeneration, but since the truth is one thing, it is said that the structure of the universe and the relationship between the universe and human beings became clear, which means it also shows the subsequent confusing philosophy and the revival of religion at the same time in Greece, philosophy that started by Plato. That means it can be absorbed all the world's philosophies and historical religions into this view of the world, which is the foundation. In addition, the view of the world is universal indeed. Even if aliens coming from other worlds, it is a truth that it will be accepted sufficiently, that is noteworthy. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva is a personality god, and a guardian spirit. By the way, the Heart Sutra is a scripture that preached based on the Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva's enlightenment, and there is no need to push Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva to other religions. Here is the reason why the compiler of Heart Sutra concealed their name in order to keep the universality. Likewise, no matter what religion, you should not impose your own personality god on others. Also, if you are restoring universality, you can see the universality in the gods of many other religions, so even if you match your feelings to the guardian spirit who is mentioned in that religion, there is no contradiction completely. The compiler of the Heart Sutra has a role to preach the universal truth, and the compiler has been entrusted to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva for the role of the guardian spirit for the salvation of sentient beings. The existence of the guardian spirit, as represented by Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, is an existence that we cannot live without being involved for a moment, so always feel close and deepening devotion. A deep and strong sense of security is born, and able to live a rich life. This devotion to the guardian spirit is a method that directly connected to salvation. There's a serious mission for those who understood the Heart Sutra. People who understood the Heart Sutra is probably a minority among human beings. But its absolute number should be enough to move the world. The ultimate truth that is explained in the Heart Sutra is the truth which finally arrives while continuing for seeking. Therefore, it is impossible for everyone to understand from the beginning. So that, as an entrance to the truth, even if you see a human being as a God's creation, even if you capture it as a materialism, or understanding for the God is somewhat advanced, and it is preaching like God is the only personality, it is allowed as a first step in understanding. However, we must make common understanding of mankind that it is not the final understanding. Therefore, the spirituality is judged to be low. In the future era, capture the castle of understanding that built by yourself in life, or the religion to which you belong, as one step to reach the 5 aggregates or emptiness, and to position yourself humbly in that multi-layered structure is required. The code was deciphered, it was added, and Heart Sutra has completed. Heart Sutra that summarized the essence of Prajnaparamita was deciphered now, but as a result of the seal being unraveled, the Heart Sutra became a scripture that everyone can understand. And, descending path is added, and then Heart Sutra is completed. It will be taken over in a developmental way in later times. While writing this book, the compiler of Heart Sutra, Tripitaka Master Xuanzang, and the author were in a strong fractal resonance. Therefore, this book is a deepening of the Heart Sutra as a role of the compiler, Xuanzang and Kufudo respectively, as a result of responding to the request of the era of the near future. I would be pleased if you can understand that it is inevitable. The view of the world is something that expresses in words the things that we do not know in the form or concept, therefore it is not the form, but the contents must be understood correctly. For that purpose, we would like to deepen our understanding, so that we can reach the deep meaning contained in the words, not limited to the par value of words, centering on basic three natures. The principle of behavior derived from the view of the world shown in Chapter of Completion and the description on the order of the world are the principle that pushed out as the author's strong mission. It is just a part of that mere entrance, content to be matured over generations. This Chapter of Completion is limited to the civilization of the present-day Earth, and it is the work that lowering the view of the world of Heart Sutra to the earth is the mission of the author. But this isn't the only solution. Since the times in the future are, it is neither deficient but also it is not fulfilled, it is natural that the principles of actions shown here can be expressed in various forms depending on the times, by region, by ethnicity, by observing the principle. For further details, you should continue gathering the wisdom of mankind, accumulating the experience of practice, and further matured by generations of time in fractal resonance. Finally, life activities will progress, ensuring the permanent peace of humanity. Because of the decipherment of the Heart Sutra for that, the page prepared in this chapter was too small. However, I would like the readers to feel that the author who thinks like this made the opening of the sealed Heart Sutra. And the Heart Sutra became Buddha taught, Great Prajnaparamita Heart Sutra here. I'd like you to accept the will of heaven, historical inevitability in this matter. Furthermore, I would like you to allow me to state the Chapter of Completion that written from the author's mission here. References: Keiichi Miyamoto, Hanya Shingyo Tao Ananuka, Buddha Karadaijioi. What is the Heart Sutra? From Buddha to Mahayana Buddhism, Shunjusha, 2004. Masaru Osaki, Sanskrit Gentendi Hanya Shingyo Oyomu. Reading Heart Sutra Original Sanskrit Version. Integrated Cultural Study VOL.19 number on/2 merger number, December 2013. http://www.bus.nihon-u.ac.jp/laboratory/pdf/osaki-masaru.pdf. Kufudo, Ningen Yarinao Shi, Human Rado, Kimbunsha, 1993. End.